And welcome back to Group Therapy, a podcast brought to you by the Livingston Parish News. Our first video recorded session, as David tries to figure out what's going on with his microphone.
About to break.
Well, there were some. Yes, we've had a lot of learning experience in here. And of course, the first time we get on camera, we're going to have some sort of problems. But anyway, good morning to everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you're listening to this. My name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. I'm joined by my other two editors here. We're going to start on my left, the viewer's left. Go ahead, sir.
Hey, this is Rob DeArmond. I'm the sports editor here at the Livingston Parish News.
And on my right.
And this is David Gray, lifestyle editor with the Livingston Parish News.
All righty, Rooster. And as we near the end of the school session, I guess you can say, moving into graduations next week.
Yes.
Which is crazy. No delay this year. So we'll have that next week. But a lot of things wrapping down. Not a whole lot going on in terms of community front as of right now, but quite a bit of sports action. And
just the opposite.
Yes, just the opposite with sports. Quite a bit going on. And Mr. David Gray has helped out here on the home front as you were in Sulphur the last 3 days of last week. So we're going to start with you, and then we're going to pop over to David, because David actually got to see, I think it was a perfect game, wasn't it?
Yes.
So that was fun. So, Rob, first and foremost, we had 3 teams go to state. One team lost, but has a lot to look forward to the future. One lost, and it pretty heartbreaking. But then we also had a state champ. So let's start with them.
Yeah, you got Holden that comes back, and you'll call them a four-peat because there was no state champion last year. So that's four years in a row, and I think they kind of came in, talking to them afterwards, they score 8 runs in the third inning, beat Anacoco for the state championship. They just kind of started putting some things together, a little small ball right at first, and then they start swinging away, which is that small ball stuff is not something that they did normally during the year, but it just started working for them and able to put runners on base and then start swinging away and just kind of pull away there. I think just in talking to some of the players, it's one of those things where Gracie Duffy was the outstanding player, and she's kind of like we kind of nobody expected us to kind of do it, and here we are. I guess they kind of took it as that core group of seniors that they had for so long, in Olivia Lackey and Emma Hutchinson and Ashley Fogg, who they're all playing college softball right now, but they lost that core group and kind of took that as we want to win it for them, and at the same time we want to show them that, hey, we're our own team too, and I think that's what they were able to do.
Sure, and they still, as you kind of saying, they did it for that core that left. But it also means they've still got several years of open window.
You would think so. There's only a handful of seniors going, that have left. And when you think back on it, these sophomores on this team were actually in the 8th grade. That first time going to Sulphur, and a lot of times you can get in there and that whole atmosphere can be intimidating just by itself. It's not who you're playing; it's just what's going on around you can be awful. If you're not ready for it, you're not used to it, it can be, it can kind of throw you off of what you're trying to do. But they seem to handle it. They've been there, and it seemed like some of those younger kids kind of enjoyed it, but they also had those veterans to kind of say, hey, this is how we do it. This is how we handle things.
Right, and you kind of have to get out of your own head.
Exactly.
When you're going into a situation like that. Going to save the Doyle loss for last, because we're going to kind of use that to segue into Doyle baseball. So let's talk about French Settlement for a second. They got a chance to go to Sulphur. Lots of opportunity to build.
They've got one senior there that they're losing in Blair Henderson. I made sure to talk to her afterward, because it seems like they've kind of laid a foundation here for this team. They got off to a really good start during the season, kind of carried that momentum over. And when they get there, you're just looking. It just so happened that the first couple games I was able to sit by the radio guy from Manny, and we were looking at charts and things and how many home runs they had hit and things like that, and you just kind of look at it and go, man, no wonder they're here, and then you look at French Settlement comes in as a 12 seed, which is a 12 playing a 1. You kind of look at it, but and on paper how things are supposed to work out. French Settlement hung with them, they go 1-1, and then Manny has a big inning and then kind of takes a lead. Then French Settlement comes back. They don't catch up, but they come back, and it's one of those things where some errors just kind of got them. Some pitching, they wound up running through three pitchers, and Emma PT winds up coming in. She starts, and then they wind up bringing her back in later in the game. It's one of those deals, and they eventually Manny eventually gets a 3-run home run to run rule them. But it's one of those things where you just kind of look at it, and it at the end of that game, it wasn't like, hey, we lost. It was kind of like, what, hey, this is we did something here, and there's the potential to maybe come back. There's no guarantee you're going to be back, but there's the potential's there because that core group is coming back.
Sure.
And they're young. They're young. Seventh grader starting for you. When that happens, you've got
seventh graders starting for you, you get to Sulphur.
And you
there's
get
a
to
lot of
Sulphur.
opportunity.
Yes.
So, but that is interesting. I mean, having to bring your starting pitcher back in, that doesn't happen often.
No. I think when Coach West, when Blake went to the circle, it's kind of like, well, who's he going to bring in here? Because you're kind of looking and brings Emma back in, and I asked her, I was like, hey, what kind of goes through your mind when he comes back and says, hey, and she was like, I was ready, just bring me back. Let's do it again. It's kind of like you get to hit the reset button and say, let's start it over and see what happens.
Sure. So last but certainly not least, Doyle made it to their state championship game, but unfortunately, just a tough loss. Tell us a little bit about that.
And I'll go back to the semifinal game before against Rose Pine, which was, I think if you guys were following me on Twitter, it was literally, I told them, it's almost like you put it on a hotkey. It was going so long, scoreless. We're scoreless. And that was it every time. And so eventually what winds up happening, just from our standpoint, what happens is French Settlement's on one field and Doyle's on another, and the dugouts, they are against each other in Sulphur. So you've got one game going on one field, one on the other. So as French Settlement winds down, Doyle is going into extra innings. And then so I'm down there. By that time I'd gotten down, so I'm actually able to go watch the end of that game, and they wind up getting a sacrifice fly from Elise Jones to win that game 1-0 in 8 innings. So you can imagine, the emotion of that. You get through, and then 24 hours later you're playing in a state championship game. But that's how the tournament works. And then Elise comes up, she gets I think to lead off the second inning, hits a solo home run. It's 1-0 for a long time.
Right.
And that they just kind of settle in. And we talked about Manny and how many home runs they had hit and the power they had. Marley Olivier is throwing a one hitter up until I think they gave up the first hit in the 5th inning, I think. So it's 2-0, and then all of a sudden Manny just started hitting her. I think they got 6 straight singles, and it winds up 4-2. It's no, hey, we made mistakes. It's none of that. They just started hitting her, and that's when I talked to Coach DeSalle at the end of the game. She said we kind of knew that could happen, and that's just the kind of team they are. And she tipped her hat to Marley to hold them to one hit for as long as she did. That's quite the accomplishment.
Right, because you had already had a chance to see Manny. You knew after having discussed with the radio guy for Manny, they could hit.
Yeah, and they did the same thing to French Settlement. It was you get a flurry of hits. It's nothing huge. It's just enough to keep the bats going. You just turn it over, and that's exactly what they did to Doyle. And it winds up 4-2. It's just a different kind of scenario there.
Sure. So jumping over to the boys. Since you were in Sulphur, Mr. Gray over here bounced around to a lot of baseball at the end of last week.
Caught a lot of baseball, yes.
But
I appreciate it. Thank you.
One of the things that you did catch was a big game from Doyle. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about what you saw.
Yeah, Andrew Uritich, is that how you pronounce his last name? Yeah. I've been butchering that since I started covering baseball.
You got it, man.
He's also a basketball player, and I covered their playoff game, and I was messing it up then. But no, I've covered, this was my 3rd Doyle baseball game. He's pitched every one, and he has been lights out. And then comes, their biggest playoff test of so far in the quarterfinals, and then he's perfect. It just shows, that they're number one for a reason, because, a big reason is because they have Andrew on the mound pitching. And, I told Rob when he texted me the final score of the game, because I went to go cover the Walker game, asked him the final score. He said 6-0. I was like, oh, well, they scored all 6 of those
So
in the
they got
first
it. Yeah,
inning.
he said they got it all in the
I
first,
caught all
so-
the action. So, but yeah, no, it was a good weekend. We got to get photo galleries of all 3 of the baseball teams, all 3 that were in the quarterfinals advanced. So now, I mean, that were in the regional round, advanced to the quarterfinals. So now we're into this last mark before possibly another trip to Sulphur for Rob.
Yeah, so we've got Springfield on the road, Doyle and Walker at home.
That's correct.
And
Holden got knocked out on Monday.
hit us with those matchups real quick.
We got it'll be this is going to be interesting. I think this could be. I talked to Coach Beatty yesterday, but Doyle is hosting Kinder. If you guys remember, the last time Doyle played Kinder, it was in a state championship game.
I covered that game.
Well,
actually.
it was a couple years ago. They wound up playing, and so it's all the same. A lot of the same cast of characters. The kids who are seniors now for Doyle were sophomores then.
Oh yeah, they played them again, didn't they?
Yeah,
That's
this was
right.
in 2019, and they played them and lost in that state championship.
Yeah, the one
game,
I covered was several years ago.
Yeah, and Coach Beatty brought that one up. So the last few times Kinder's had the upper hand here, but they're going to start as far as we know. Coach Beatty told me they're going to start Andrew in the Friday night game to hopefully put some pressure on Kinder to say, okay, hopefully we get that first game and the pressure will be on Kinder to win the next 2.
Right, because we are in the 3-game series.
That's right. That's exactly what we're doing now. Just so you guys know and are aware. So that first game there will be Friday at 6:00 at Johnny's Hartwell Park, and the second game will be played at 11 on Saturday morning. That's Doyle. It should be an interesting series. You got also in 2A, you've got Springfield in the quarterfinals. This is the first time in school history they've been to the quarterfinals.
That's a big deal.
So they've been playing really well. They had a comeback win over Darwin Woods Charter in that second game of their series last week. So I told Coach Blanchard I'm kind of sitting in the hospitality room up there, and I got it on Game Changer just trying to see what they're doing. And it's like, okay, they're trailing. And all of a sudden, oh, well, they're not trailing.
Yeah.
Oh, we okay, they just won it, So he just said that's kind of a momentum thing because he said that the first few innings or up until that 7th inning, he said we just weren't playing like we had played all year long, and just kind of sat with the kids and said, hey, just y'all go have fun. And once they started doing that, things started clicking for them. They're going to start in this first one. They're going to Mangum, which is just over a 3-hour ride. He said that's kind of I asked him about you kind of got to beat the trip and then beat the opponent, but he said we kind of worked this stuff out, and this is really the first time they've been able to put that into play. But they're going to start Jaden Teague, who's had a phenomenal season, perfect games, no hitters. He's done all of that stuff this year. So that's going to be their first one. First game of that series is going to be at 5:30. Second game will be Saturday at 1:30. In the 5A ranks, we've got Walker playing New Iberia. What this has allowed everybody to do, because normally you're playing during the week, but these series are going Friday, Saturday, so you can kind of reset your pitching. Coach Sandifer at Walker said they're going to start 0-4s, which kind of gives them. They can come with Caleb Webb or Grant Edwards in those last 2 games, and that's that series is going to be Friday starting at 6. The second game will be Saturday at 1.
So all 3 teams really looking, since you said they have that chance to reset pitching, really looking to come out with their aces and get that upper hand in the first game.
That's exactly what you're trying to do. When you look at it, you go with Springfield, you got 3 really good pitchers. He said Coach Blanchard said he's comfortable with anybody. With Doyle, they've just got arms. I mean, they had a perfect game against Oakdale to start the playoffs. Last week? So that's 2 of them they've had in I guess that was 2 in a row, right? 2 perfect games in a row. So to start it off, so they've got the pitching too. Just kind of set it up, and Walker's just. You get to that point, and you just kind of set up your pitching and say, okay, if you can throw, you are available. I think that's how it happens now. So
right. And hopefully not like softball where you got to come back to your starting pitcher in the middle of the game.
Right. I had not seen that in a while.
So quick question to segue. That's most of our sports going on. We do have real quick the state track meet coming up?
That's actually started today. We're filming this on Thursday, so it actually started today. It'll go through Saturday. Today is the I believe it's the BC and 1A meet. So we've got Holden Marpaw athletes competing today. Tomorrow it'll be 2 and 3, which will be Springfield, Albany. I think Doyle's got an athlete in there. And then the 5A on Friday, we've got some athletes from Denham and Denham Walker and Live Oak. And I guess the biggest thing to check there on Saturday would be Clayton Sims in the pole vault, and we can see if he can defend a championship there.
I want to ask you a question about Sulphur. There was, the mask mandate was lifted. LHSAA decided that they were going to let capacity fans in. How did that work?
I did not see any difference. I mean, the crowd was, to me, it looked like your normal crowd at Sulphur. You got parking lots are full. Everybody's out there enjoying it. I will say this: when you drive into the Lake Charles area, lots of blue tarps on the roofs of houses, lots of blue tarps on the roofs of businesses. And, you kind of come in the afternoon and I use my GPS to kind of get to the park, and it brought me a different way. So I came up, I guess, from the backside of Sulphur to get to the park, and I didn't realize until I went to leave that night, because I had there's this one way they take you up the main drag and you kind of turn into the park. Evidently a bridge was out. And I don't know if that's a result of the hurricane, but there was a barricade up, so we kind of had to take a different route. It wasn't bad, but when the sun came up, I guess from our hotel and the hotels where we were staying, a couple of them were remodeling and things like that. But you just shells of businesses, and it's not 100%. So the fact that they were able to pull off the tournament and hold it there and host it. You got to tip your cap, because if you go into the park, you can't tell that any of that stuff happened.
Sure. So they got it ready.
Yeah, it was you got to tip your cap to them. It's just for the folks in Sulphur to pull it off. I thought they did a phenomenal job.
Right. So David, let's talk about COVID.
Of course.
Yes. The dearly beloved COVID. We are gathered here today. Something that's interesting now is that we're in the middle of the legislative session, and within that time frame, they've got to come up with a plan. And of course, the governor has a plan. I don't know if the legislature has a budget. I don't know if they have a plan for the ARP money or not, which is the American Rescue Plan. I know the governor's outlined that. So part of that is the restaurant fund. So I'd like for you to kind of give an overview of ARP, and then talk about that restaurant fund first.
Well, yeah. So Governor Edwards last week, he sort of unveiled his proposal basically for the American Rescue Plan funding, the $1.6 billion that's going to be coming to the state, with an additional $1.6 billion to be coming in the future. He said distributed over the next couple of years. And Governor Edwards, and he said this in his press conference this week, I mean, he's really wanting to put this money to good use, because I mean, he's looking at it as basically a one-time bonus that can, to make a difference in the state's infrastructure, which is, Louisiana, as he said yesterday, has D+ grades for its roadway. So that's something he's wanting to make a dent in. The tourism, which last year lost $5 billion. And expected revenue, including around $1 billion just for Mardi Gras alone. So I mean, he's trying to put money in tourism to kickstart that. And some of the state's water systems, which over 50, something that caught a lot of people off guard. Over 50% of the state's water systems are more than 50 years old. So I mean, just trying to use this money towards making, big dents and, repairing some of the stuff that we need across this state. So that's really the main push of his proposal that's going to have to be approved by the legislature. But also within that, there is the cannot remember the name of the restaurant revitalization fund now, that restaurants, bars, caterers, any of those food related businesses, they were hit really hard by COVID over the last year. I mean, that was one of the big things. And, Louisiana, we're known for food. And that was one of those business settings that were really affected because, I mean, restaurants are basically told to close. You can offer to-go services, bars, we're all allowed to do to-go stuff. But, I mean, that's not really where those businesses make their money. They make their money by having people come in, eating there, drinking there, socializing there. That's a big aspect of Louisiana in our bars and restaurants is a social gathering. That's where you come together. And so now some of this art funding is going to be going toward these restaurants. So, I mean, that, just ways to, kickstart the economy because, the last year, I mean, we're still going to be dealing with this for a long time. And just a way to kind of get things, more back to normal.
Sure. Anything else that he announced yesterday with regard to COVID? I mean, we're still...
No, I mean, yeah, we're barely a week into him removing the mask mandate, which Rob saw plenty of this weekend, I'm sure, in Sulphur. And I was at Cinco Watson Fest, and I saw plenty of that. There's, people are kind of now shedding those masks. But the governor and Joseph Canada, the state health officer, they're still, obviously the mask mandate has been lifted. It was implemented in July, but even before that, that was still the recommendation to wear a mask. And that is still the recommendation if you have not been vaccinated or if you're in a space with a close space with other people who haven't been vaccinated, is to wear those masks. So, nothing new. And on that front, these proclamations are in effect for 28 days. So, we got another 3 weeks until we hear about what the next one is. But some big news with vaccinations, or potentially big news, is now the FDA, they're meeting to determine whether or not the Pfizer vaccine, which is the only one that's currently available for people under 18, 16, 17-year-olds, they're going to determine whether or not that can be approved for kids 12 to 15. So that's, more of the state that could potentially be vaccinated. And Dr. Joe Cantor in the press conference this week said if ACIP makes their recommendation and the CDC and FDA make those recommendations, the Louisiana Department of Health will follow pretty quickly with their own recommendation that it be approved, that that kids in the state 12 to 15 get vaccinated. So, I mean, but like I said, that all will be decided over the next week to 10 days, most likely, just from what Dr. Joe Cantor said in the press conference this week.
Big deal for schools next year.
Yes.
It's a big deal.
And EBR, I haven't heard anything from WIFS on this front, but EBR has started now vaccinating. They're hosting vaccine clinics at different high schools in East Baton Rouge Parish. So, I mean, that's something that, potentially could start happening in more schools, especially if, it gets approved for ages 12 to 15. Then you'll probably see more school systems doing that sort of mass vaccine clinics that they did for teachers and school employees earlier this year.
Right. So, lots going on the COVID front, but let's talk a little bit about community.
Yeah.
And it was Cinco de Mayo.
Technically the job.
Yes, technically the job. So tell us a little bit about how Cinco was a little more muted affair this year because there's still some COVID concerns out there, as well as, from the grapevine, we heard a lot of these guys had already spent the money and prepared for Cinco last year, only for it to be canceled. So everybody kind of licking their wounds, trying to rebuild this year. So tell us what you saw out there this weekend leading up to Cinco, which was yesterday.
I saw a lot of people this weekend. That's pretty much it. Yeah, I mean the Casa Maria, they do their Cinco Fest, and they hold it on a Saturday. So sometimes it doesn't, as this year, doesn't fall exactly on May 5th because it's an all day event and people are gonna be able to take off during the week. So it was last Saturday, May 1st, and I mean you had 3 big bands out there. 3 Bag of Donuts, Chase Howard Band, Molly Ringwalds. You had probably, they said at one point, around 2,000 people there. So, I mean, one of the biggest gatherings, that I've been to in the parish in the last year, and I go to pretty much all the gatherings in the parish. So I mean, it's just another sign that things are creeping back to normal, even though it's probably not as fast as some people like, but I mean, it's still happening. I mean, that can't be denied that we're slowly getting things back to normal. That was another big thing, which came a weekend, 1 week after Springfest, which came a couple weeks after Bo's Extravaganza and Holden. So I mean, there's a bunch of things that are happening that are showing things getting back to normal. And yeah, I mean, it looked like Cinco de Mayo of the past. I've covered that event before. I mean, obviously not Cinco de Mayo of last year, but because last year it was just crazy how they, basically restaurants had to at that time convert their parking lots into dining areas because they weren't at that time. We were still under a stay-at-home order. Like people forget that that wasn't lifted until the middle of May, and so last Cinco de Mayo, restaurants technically couldn't have people inside, but that people were allowed to order to-go food and bring their own lawn chairs and stuff like that. So this year, I mean, like I said, I mean, people were dancing, eating, drinking. I mean, it was just like, I mean, I was working, so, but it was a fun time for everyone though. So yeah, just another sign things are getting back to normal.
A good bounce back.
Yes.
So last but certainly not least, as I like to say, we had 3 teams at
No,
cheer.
you had 6.
Oh wow. Okay, well, good luck remembering all that.
Yeah.
Apparently, Livingston Parish is quite successful at
Yes.
cheerleading. A bunch of teams went to Disney this past weekend or past week.
Yeah.
La-
Or 2 weeks ago now, technically.
Okay,
Yes.
so about 2 weeks ago, and they came home with some hardware.
Yes.
So give us the rundown.
Well, everybody knows that Live Oak High has dominated the national cheerleading competition. They've won the national championship in the last 4 years. They won it again this year. But also this year, I mean, there was a total of 6 teams that won. You had Live Oak Youth Rec, which they won in the 10-year-old, 12-year-old, and 14-year-old divisions. Live Oak Junior High won for Best Junior High. And then Denham Springs High, they won their first national championship for their game day routine. And then, like I said, Live Oak High won there. So, I mean, yeah, it was quite the showing for Livingston Parish. And that's the most, I was talking to a couple of the cheer coaches, that's the most that they believe that Livingston Parish has ever had from a single year in nationals. And for a lot of them, it was, especially for Denham Springs High, and there's going to be feature stories on the Denham Springs High and Live Oak High's championships because it was one of those. This Denham team, they actually finished second last year, I believe, and so that's something that's been eating at them the last 12 months. And
chip on their shoulder.
And I mean, another hard part is these seasons are longer this year than they typically are because typically they have this championship in February, so the season's 9 to 10 months, but because of COVID, things were kind of delayed and spread out. So I mean, these girls have been training for this for a year now straight, which that's a lot of people don't realize, like with sports like cheerleading, especially when you get into the performing aspect or competitive aspect of it, cheerleading, gymnastics, that's a lot of strain and wear and tear on your body. So I mean, these girls have been putting in the work for the last 12 months. So it was good that they was worth it for them.
Right. All that work paid off. Hard work does pay. So congratulations to all of those teams on their national championship. Of course, be on the lookout. Mr. David Gray going to be doing a feature on both of the high school teams coming up. I want to let everybody know that we did have a story about a local wedding ring that had been involved in a house fire. Celestia Jewelry fixed that up. You can check that out on our website. We also have some real estate numbers that came out. Real estate slowing down because there is no inventory. So be on the lookout. If you want to sell your home, you probably could, as long as the price is probably within 20% of what it would normally be priced. And, of course, in other places in the country, that's even worse. So please check those out. We also have a podcast with Sporting Center from last week wherein they have a new laser engraver, and we'll be talking about real estate with my dearly beloved tomorrow, Friday. We'll be in the booth with her. So Want to sign off, have these guys introduce themselves real quick. And this time we're going to start with David.
Hey, this is David Gray, lifestyle editor with the Livingston Parish News.
And Rob.
Hey, this is Rob DeArmond, sports editor at the Livingston Parish News.
And my name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you guys joining us for another episode of Group Therapy. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you watched it, if you listened to it, we appreciate that as well. Please remember we're on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. We are once a week in print on Thursdays at $7 a month to get that in your mailbox. We're also online, www.livingstonparishnews.com. We appreciate you joining us one last time. We hope you have a great day.